What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Bunny Operator here. Today we're going to talk about squibs. No, not the sea creature, a squib with a B. Some of you may or may not have heard of this term before. Some of you know what it is, but have never seen or experienced one. Regardless, it's important to understand what a squib is and be able to identify one for everyone's safety. A squib is one of the major cartridge type malfunctions and is typically caused by low charge or no charge ammunition. When ammunition is undercharged or contains no charge, the bullet or projectile does not have enough energy to travel through and exit the barrel. Now note that the primer alone generally has enough energy to push the bullet out of the casing and into the barrel's bore. Think of the primer as like a snap cap on a snap gun when we were kids. When struck, the primer ignites, and that ignition causes energy that can be just enough to push that bullet down the barrel. In the case of a squib, the bullet remains lodged in the barrel, creating a bore obstruction, which can lead to what's known as a catastrophic malfunction, or an explosion, or a kaboom, if you will, if the bullet has traveled far enough down the barrel to allow the chambering of a subsequent round. This type of malfunction is very serious, and if it isn't identified and handled accordingly, the incident can result in injury and even death sometimes, not only to yourself but also others who are nearby. It is absolutely critical that we listen and feel for any changes in our firearms behavior. A squib not only feels different, it also sounds totally different from a normal round that's been discharged, and is usually accompanied by a basic level type malfunction such as a failure to extract or a failure to feed, requiring some form of tap rack or basic type of malfunction clearing. Then again, despite this explanation, how can you know what the differences are if you're just starting out or have never experienced a squib before, let alone have seen one? Well, that's the purpose of this video. I'm going to get into what the inspiration behind this video was. A few months back, during a normal standard range day that my friends and I basically go out there and try to see where our deficiencies are, I was the person with the shot timer that was accompanying my homegirl Gwen, aka G Holster PO1, for her run of the stage that we had set up for that day. Towards the end of her run, her firearm started experiencing a malfunction, and neither of us noticed any sound differences at the time of the malfunction. I basically gave her instructions to clear the malfunction multiple times, assuming that it was simply a failure to feed due to a poor grip or XYZ item that's pretty typical. And after a few more attempts, my brain finally just clicked, and I thought that I should probably stop the attempt to re-chamber and refire and basically start to diagnose the process. Well, after dismantling the firearm and checking a few things out, we eventually looked down the barrel and determined that there was a squib in there. It was one that had just enough power to push the bullet into the barrel, but not enough to chamber the next round. It would have been very, very bad if her firearm was able to fully see the subsequent round, especially since I had her repeatedly attempt to tap the slide back into battery. Now, this was a huge failure on my part, and I really felt like poop after. Like, I basically failed her not only as her RSO, but also as her friend and more experienced shooter. This was a learning lesson for all of us and a huge reminder that squibs are a very real thing that still happened, even though they appear to not happen as often as we might think. Now, I had personally experienced a few squibs in my time and have seen others, but it's been so long that I was oblivious to the fact that her situation might have been a squib. This entire incident prompted the creation of this video, and hopefully this video will give you all a better understanding of squibs and how to identify them. After the incident, I basically sent a PSA out to some of my other homies in the firearms world and let them know what happened, just to be like, hey, this was what happened to us this day, just be on the watch out just in case anything like that happens. And I told them that I would probably make an educational video at some point, just to be able to not only educate some of the newer folks out there, but also be a static resource for people to reference back to. Unexpectedly, my homie B, aka Stupid Asshole, yep, that's his actual Instagram name, Well, B volunteered to sacrifice one of his Glocks for the sake of making this video. He purposely loaded undercharged and no charge 9mm rounds to fire them on camera for you all to see what a squib looks like and what the process is for identifying them. And we are going to get into that footage shortly, but before that, obligatory disclaimers. Do not try this at home. B is a professional and has many years of experience with loading and reloading his own ammunition. He is meticulous with what he does and how he does things. He double checks and triple checks everything before he basically puts rounds downrange. Additionally, understand that even though the examples that are shown here, and including Gwen's case, are examples of reloaded ammunition, malfunctions including squibs can happen to new factory ammunition. No ammunition is infallible. It is very important that you will inspect all ammunition for defects before you load them into your firearms. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and begin. I'll go ahead and put up a list of B's setup here for you all to see. And from here, I'll go into B's procedures for the experiment. The goals of this experiment are to demonstrate the differences in recoil impulse and sound of an uncharged, aka squib load, versus a properly charged round. And demonstrate the potential issue of chambering the next round, in this case we're using inert rounds, behind a squib, and measure the cartridge's overall length after the fact. And the purpose of that is to show if there was bullet setback. And bullet setback is essentially the projectile is being pushed deeper into the casing. Sometimes, depending on the ammo and depending on the charge, that can cause a spike in pressure in the ammunition, which can potentially also be a dangerous issue. It just depends on the ammunition, depends on the factors associated with that particular ammunition that you're using. Going back to the experiment, 2 inert rounds. A seated bullet into a case with 0 charge and no primer. These 2 inert rounds will be marked with blue on the case head. 5 rounds loaded into the case with 0 powder charge and with a primer, and these will be marked red on the case head. 5 rounds will be loaded into a case with 1.5 grains of tight group powder and will have a primer, and they will be marked black on the case head. This will be the low charge group. And finally, a supply of standard practice ammunition loaded with 3.8 grains of tight group powder, including a primer. These are unmarked and they are separated and isolated from the test loads. This is essentially the control of whatever practice ammunition that B normally uses. The magazines will be loaded in order, with the last rounds going first and the first rounds being the last rounds to be loaded. That will consist of the inert round going first, followed by the squib round, followed by the 2 practice rounds. The first 2 rounds, which are the practice rounds, will be fired, followed by the squib load, and the intent of this is to show the differences in recoil and in sound between a full power load and a squib load. After the squib occurs, and after realizing there is a malfunction, this will be followed by a tap rack or a clearance of the malfunction, and after the tapping and racking, you would be loading the inert round after the fact and then attempt to fire again. In this clip, you can see that B tries out the low charge rounds that was mentioned earlier. What's interesting is that even though it was a low charge round, it had just enough power to push the projectile all the way out the barrel and actually end up hitting the target. Granted, very delayed, but it still left the barrel. Now note that there was not enough energy to send the slide back to eject the spent casing. You can see that B has to manually tap rack to extract that spent casing and then load the subsequent inert round behind it, which results in a click because there's no primer. Moving on to the squib footage. For these videos, the squibs were all produced by 0 charge rounds, meaning the rounds did not have any gunpowder in them. The bullets or projectiles were removed by the energy of the primers being ignited. You can see that B is double checking the rounds before he starts firing. Once again, these are the squib loads. And that pop you hear is the primer going off. And there goes the barrel obstruction and the failure to feed the subsequent round. Dismantling of the firearm, checking for bore obstructions, and there goes the squib. Round 2 for the squibs. And there goes that primer pop again. Tap rack. And now he's attempting to tap the slide forward, but there is a bore obstruction, and that subsequent round failed to load. There goes that squib again. Now here B's about to show you the bore clearing procedure. Essentially he's taking a rod to knock that projectile out of the barrel. And there he goes. There's that squib. Round 3. There's that pop again. Tap rack. This time this magazine was empty. There was no inert round behind it. But we know there's a squib. And there it is. Let's go and clear this bore obstruction. And this time around, B's going to go ahead and reassemble the firearm and try again. Here we go, the final squib. There goes that primer pop. Tap rack. And there goes that bore obstruction or failure to feed. There goes that bore obstruction and that squib. One more time, clearing procedure, knock out that squib. And here is another angle of the squib loads, just to give you an idea of what it looks like from a side view. There goes that primer pop. There goes the obstruction and the failure to feed. You can see from this angle that even with taps to the rear of the slide, just like in Gwen's situation, the slide would not go into battery due to the bullet of the previous round being lodged in the barrel, aka the squib, just far enough in, but not far enough to allow chambering of the next round. I'm going to explain what B is doing here. You can see that he's measuring the full cartridge right now. The original seated depth of the cartridge, aka the entire round, was set to an average of 1.150 inches. After clearing the assumed malfunction and attempting to force the next round in this case it was an inert round, into battery, B removed the inert round and measured the overall length of the inert round. The overall length of the inert round that was just racked out now measures at 1.0925. If the inert round were to go into battery using more force, in this case hitting the back of the slide or forcing it in, the overall length of the round will be substantially shorter. Depending on the type of powder used, this could create a dramatic pressure spike within the chamber, which can potentially be dangerous. This sudden rise in chamber pressure, combined with the barrel obstruction such as a squib, can potentially lead to a catastrophic malfunction such as the explosion or the quote-unquote kaboom, potentially leading to injury to the shooter or those around you. Short commentary from B. A squib load is often overlooked and something that the community needs to take into consideration. This type of malfunction can happen with factory new ammo and remanufactured ammunition. He hopes that this demonstration can be of use not only as a learning tool, but also for discussion within the community. I certainly agree with that, B. Thank you for taking the time to load ammunition, film yourself, and provide content for this video. I certainly appreciate it. I'm sure that the persons watching this video certainly appreciate it as well. So thank you, B. For you folks out there, go and follow B's Instagram. Again, that's stupid asshole. If you have any questions about squibs, or questions in general, or want to provide your experiences with squibs or malfunctions, comment below. Do help me out by liking this video, commenting below. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you can stay up to date with my video releases. Go follow my Instagram and Facebook for daily content. Visit the video description down below for discount codes. Please do support the folks that support my peasant antics. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do. And of course, I hope that you found this information useful. Do share it with others. Spread the information to help the community learn. That's all I got for you today. Thank you for watching. Bunny Operator signing out.